The cold wind howled through the nearly empty streets as the man sat on the sidewalk, his back against a brick wall. His clothes were worn, his face weathered by years of hardship. To anyone passing by, he was just another homeless man, invisible to the world. But this man had a story, one that nobody could have guessed. Two police officers, one young and eager, the other older and more cynical, walked down the street, their boots clicking against the pavement. They spotted the man and exchanged a glance. The younger one smirked. "Looks like we got another one taking up space," he muttered. The older officer chuckled. "Let's have some fun." They approached the man, their tone dripping with mockery. "Hey, buddy, you can't sleep here," the younger cop said, nudging the man's leg with his boot. "This isn't a hotel." The man looked up slowly, his eyes tired but calm. "Just resting for a bit," he said softly. The older officer crossed his arms. "Resting? You're blocking the sidewalk. Move along before we have to make you." A few bystanders slowed down, watching the scene unfold. Some looked uncomfortable, but nobody spoke up. The homeless man sighed and began gathering his few belongings, a tattered bag, a thin blanket. The younger cop laughed. "What's in the bag?" "Your $1 million fortune." The man paused, then looked directly at the officer. "You never know what someone's carrying," he said quietly. The officers exchanged amused glances. "Oh yeah? And what are you carrying? Some spare change and old food?" The man didn't answer. He simply reached into his bag and pulled out a small, worn-out wallet. The cops watched, still smirking, as he opened it and slowly took out an ID card. The younger officer snatched it from his hand. "Let's see who we're dealing with here." His eyes scanned the card, then widened. His face went pale. The older cop frowned. "What? What's wrong?" The younger officer could barely speak. This can't be real." The homeless man stood up, his posture straightening. Suddenly, he didn't look so weak anymore. His voice was steady, firm. "It's real." The older officer grabbed the ID from his partner. His mouth fell open. The name, the title, it wasn't just some random homeless guy. This man was someone important. Someone very important. And the cops had just made a huge mistake. The older officer's hands trembled as he held the ID card. His mind raced, trying to make sense of what he was seeing. The younger cop stood frozen, his earlier smirk long gone, replaced by a sickening dread in the pit of his stomach. The homeless man, no, this man, watched them calmly. There was no anger in his eyes, just a quiet disappointment that cut deeper than any shout could. "Sir." The older officer finally managed to say, his voice cracking. We didn't know." The man took back his ID and slipped it into his wallet. "Most people don't," he said. "But that's the problem, isn't it?" The bystanders who had been watching now whispered among themselves. A few pulled out their phones, sensing that something big was happening. The younger officer swallowed hard, his mind flashing back to every insult, every mocking word they had thrown at this man just moments ago. The older cop straightened his posture, trying to salvage whatever dignity he had left. "Is there anything we can do, sir?" The man studied them for a moment. "You could start by treating people with respect," he said. "Even those who don't look like they deserve it." The words hit like a hammer. The younger officer opened his mouth to apologize, but nothing came out. His pride had vanished, replaced by shame. Just then, a sleek black car pulled up to the curb. The windows were tinted, and the engine hummed with quiet power. The bystanders stepped back, sensing that this was no ordinary vehicle. The passenger door opened, and a sharply dressed man in a suit stepped out. He glanced at the two officers, then turned to the homeless man. "Sir, we've been looking for you," he said respectfully. The man nodded. I needed some time alone. The suited man opened the back door, waiting. The homeless man, now clearly anything but homeless, took one last look at the stunned officers. "Remember this moment," he said softly. Then he got into the car. The door closed, and the vehicle pulled away, leaving the two cops standing there in silence. The younger officer finally found his voice. Who was that?" The older cop let out a shaky breath. "Someone way above our pay grade." The crowd murmured, phone still recording. Within minutes, the video would spread. And by the end of the day, the entire city, maybe even the country, would know the truth. The officers had mocked the wrong man. And now, they would have to face the consequences. The black car disappeared down the street, leaving the two officers standing in stunned silence. The younger cop's knees felt weak. His mind replayed every cruel joke, every condescending remark they'd made. His throat tightened. "Sergeant," he whispered, "what just happened?" The older officer wiped sweat from his brow. His usual tough guy act had crumbled. "We messed up. Bad." A woman from the crowd stepped forward, phone still recording. "You guys are in trouble, huh?" Her voice wasn't mocking, just stating a fact. The sergeant shot her a look but had no comeback. His radio crackled to life. "All units, report to precinct immediately. I repeat, all patrol officers return at once." The dispatcher's voice carried an urgency they'd never heard before. The younger cop's stomach dropped. "That's about us, isn't it?" They walked back to their cruiser in silence. The usual comfortable banter between partners was gone. The drive to the station felt like the longest of their lives. Every cop in the building was gathered in the briefing room. The chief stood at the front, face grim. A large TV screen behind him showed a paused video. The officers recognized themselves immediately. The homeless man's face was blurred, but their own smirks were crystal clear. "Before we start," the chief said, "does anyone want to explain this?" He hit play. The room watched in horror as the video showed the entire encounter, the mocking tone, the boot nudging the man's leg, the laughter. Then the moment everything changed. The gasps from the crowd when the ID came out. The black car arriving. The screen went black. The chief crossed his arms. "That man you harassed? He's a retired federal judge. And the mayor's uncle." A collective groan filled the room. The two offending officers sank lower in their chairs. The younger cop raised a shaking hand. "Sir, we didn't know." "That's the point." The chief slammed his fist on the podium. "You didn't try to know. You saw a homeless man and treated him like garbage." A female officer in the front row spoke up. "Chief, what's going to happen?" The chief took a deep breath. "The mayor called me personally. There's going to be an investigation. Internal Affairs is already pulling your body cam footage." He looked directly at the two officers. "You're suspended. Effective now." As the meeting broke up, none of their fellow officers would meet their eyes. The message was clear, they were on their own. The younger cop sat on the steps, head in hands. "My wife's gonna kill me," he muttered. "We just had a baby." The sergeant lit a cigarette with unsteady hands. "Kid, you better pray this doesn't go viral." As if on cue, both their phones buzzed simultaneously. A news alert. Viral video shows police harassment, mystery man's identity revealed. They looked at each other in horror. It was already too late. The younger cop's hands shook as he stared at his phone screen. The video had already racked up 500,000 views in under 2 hours. Comments flooded in by the thousands, most filled with outrage, some calling for their badges, others demanding jail time. His partner crushed his cigarette underfoot. "We need to get ahead of this. Now." But how? The damage was done. The video showed everything, their smug expressions, their demeaning tone, the moment their arrogance turned to terror. There was no spinning this. The black car pulled up to a stately brownstone in the city's historic district. The suited man opened the door, and the man they'd all underestimated stepped out. Gone was the hunched posture of a homeless person. He stood tall now, his sharp eyes taking in the familiar surroundings. A woman in her 50s rushed down the front steps, her designer sweater flapping in the breeze. "Uncle James. Thank God you're all right." She threw her arms around him. Mayor Rebecca Carter had never been so relieved in her life. When her security detail had shown her the video, her blood ran cold. Seeing her beloved uncle, the man who'd raised her after her parents died, being treated like trash by her own police force. It took everything in her not to scream. Inside, she handed him a change of clothes. "Why do you keep doing this?" she asked, voice thick with emotion. "Going out there with no security, no ID, letting people think." "Because someone needs to remind us how we treat the invisible," he said softly, slipping off the tattered jacket. His movements were deliberate, like a man half his age. "And today, 2 of your officers gave me quite the demonstration." The mayor's face hardened. "They'll be fired. I'll make sure of it." Her uncle shook his head. "That's the easy way out." "And since when do we take the easy way?" Reporters had gathered outside the police station, cameras trained on the entrance. The 2 officers had to sneak out the back like criminals, avoiding the media frenzy. The younger cop's phone rang. His wife. Again. He couldn't bring himself to answer. What would he say? That he'd possibly thrown away his career, their livelihood, because he wanted to impress his partner with some cheap laughs? His partner drove in silence, knuckles white on the steering wheel. For the first time in his 20-year career, he felt real fear. Not the adrenaline-pumping kind from chasing suspects, but the slow, creeping dread of knowing he'd become the very thing he'd sworn to protect people from, a bully with a badge. The press conference was packed. Mayor Carter stepped up to the podium, her expression unreadable. Cameras flashed. "Last night's incident was unacceptable," she began, voice steady. "But after consulting with the individual involved, we've decided on an unconventional approach to justice." She paused, letting the room lean in. "The officers will keep their jobs, on one condition." A murmur ran through the crowd. "For the next 30 days, they'll live on the streets. No badges. No guns. No police salaries. Just the clothes on their backs and the kindness, or cruelty, of strangers." The room erupted. The press room exploded with noise. Reporters shouted questions over each other, camera flashes popping like fireworks. The younger officer watching the live feed on his phone felt the blood drain from his face. 30 days, on the streets? His voice cracked. "She can't be serious." His partner didn't answer. The veteran cop was staring at the screen, watching as Mayor Carter continued her announcement with steely determination. The mayor held up a hand, waiting for the chaos to die down. "This isn't just punishment, it's education," she said firmly. "These officers will experience firsthand what they so casually mocked." A reporter near the front shouted, "Isn't this cruel and unusual punishment?" The mayor's smile didn't reach her eyes. "More cruel than harassing a vulnerable citizen? More unusual than sworn protectors becoming the threat?" The crowd murmured. No one had an answer to that. The union rep slammed his fist on the table. "We'll fight this. They can't force." "They can," the older officer interrupted quietly. "And we're going to do it." His partner's head snapped up. "Are you crazy? We could get killed out there." The veteran cop finally looked up, his eyes haunted. "You didn't recognize him either, did you? Judge Carter. The man who put away half the criminals in this city." He swallowed hard. Remember the street judge case from 10 years back? The younger cop's stomach dropped. Everyone knew that story, the judge who went undercover as a homeless man to expose corruption in the shelter system. Dozens had gone to prison because of his testimony. "We're lucky this is all we're getting," his partner muttered. They stood outside the precinct in donated thrift store clothes, threadbare jeans, stained sweatshirts, worn-out sneakers. All their personal items had been confiscated. No wallets. No phones. Just $5 and change each and a list of shelters that may or may not have space. A social worker handed them folded papers. "Your temporary IDs. Don't lose them, they're your only way to eat at city shelters." The younger cop stared at the flimsy cardstock. It bore his photo but listed him as John Doe number 1. The ultimate humiliation, he'd become one of the nameless people he'd ignored his entire career. As they walked away from the precinct, reality set in. Where would they sleep tonight? How would they eat? The veteran cop suddenly stopped, staring at a familiar storefront. "Remember last month," he said quietly. "We ran that homeless guy out of this alley for loitering." His partner followed his gaze. The alley was empty now. Neither wanted to admit they were considering it as a potential sleeping spot. The shelter was full. They'd arrived too late. Rain began to fall as they wandered the streets, the $5 long gone on a single meal at McDonald's. The younger cop shivered in his thin sweatshirt. "We could go to my sister's," he suggested weakly. "And fail on the first day?" His partner shook his head. "They'll be checking. Cameras everywhere these days." They ended up under a bridge with 3 other homeless men, who eyed them suspiciously. "First-timers, huh?" one grizzled man chuckled, passing around a bottle in a paper bag. "Don't worry, the cops usually don't bother us here." The irony burned worse than the cheap liquor they refused. As the younger cop tried to sleep on the cold concrete, a rat skittered over his leg. He jerked awake with a yelp, earning laughter from their new companions. His partner just stared into the darkness. Only 29 more days to go. The morning sun burned the younger cop's eyes as he woke up stiff and aching. Concrete wasn't meant for sleeping. His mouth tasted like dirt and his back screamed in protest as he sat up. The other men under the bridge were already gone, leaving behind only a crushed soda can and the lingering smell of urine. His partner was already awake, staring at his cracked reflection in a puddle. "Shelter opens for breakfast in an hour," he muttered. "If we hurry, we might actually eat today." The line outside the shelter stretched around the block. The younger cop's stomach growled loudly as the scent of oatmeal and burnt coffee wafted through the air. He'd never been so hungry in his life. A woman ahead of them turned, her eyes narrowing. "Hey! I know you too." The officers froze. "You're those cops from the video." Her voice rose, drawing attention. "The ones who messed with that homeless dude." Suddenly every face in line was turned their way. The mood shifted instantly from tired resignation to angry recognition. The veteran cop raised his hands. "Look, we're just trying to get some food." "Like you let us do," a man shouted from the back. The shelter door opened, but no one moved toward it. The crowd had formed a loose circle around them, eyes burning with years of pent-up frustration. The younger cop felt his pulse in his throat. This was how it ended, beaten to death in a breadline by people they'd sworn to protect. Then an old man with a cane pushed through the crowd. "Enough," he croaked. To the officer's shock, it was Mr. Delaney, a fixture at the precinct, a homeless vet they'd all ignored for years. "These boys are learning," Delaney said, tapping his cane for emphasis. "Let 'em learn on empty stomachs if you want, but don't become what you hate." The crowd grumbled but dispersed. The shelter worker at the door shook his head. "You two better come back later. For your own safety." They sat on a bench, defeated. The younger cop rubbed his aching stomach. We used to arrest people for sleeping here. His partner didn't answer. He was watching a familiar black sedan roll slowly past the park. The window lowered just enough to reveal a pair of knowing eyes, Judge Carter's. The car kept moving, leaving them with their hunger and their thoughts. Their beards had grown in, their clothes now properly dirty. The younger cop scratched at flea bites on his arms as they dug through a dumpster behind a grocery store. "Expired yogurt," he announced, holding up a container. They ate it greedily, ignoring the sour aftertaste. A store employee came out with another bag of trash, stopping when he saw them. "Hey! Get out of," then recognition flashed across his face. "Oh. Oh. You're those guys." He dropped the bag. "Take whatever you want." The kindness stung worse than the insults. They'd finally gotten beds, thin mats on a crowded floor reeking of sweat and disinfectant. The younger cop lay awake listening to the symphony of coughs and snores. His partner whispered into the dark, "You realize we've arrested half the people in here?" A voice answered from nearby, "Yeah. And now you know why we kept coming back." Neither officer slept that night. The younger cop sat on the sidewalk, holding a cardboard sign he'd made. His hands shook with shame. He'd never begged before. A well-dressed woman dropped $1 in his cup, then did a double take. "My God, it is you." She snatched her dollar back. "Get a real job." That night, under a highway overpass, the younger cop finally broke down sobbing. His partner let him cry, because what else was there to say? They were beginning to understand. The rain came down in sheets, turning the streets into shallow rivers. The two officers huddled under a bus stop awning, their donated sneakers soaked through. The younger cop coughed violently. 3 days of sleeping in damp clothes had left him feverish. His partner pressed the back of his hand to the younger man's forehead. "You're burning up." "No shit," the younger cop croaked. His whole body ached. In their old life, he'd have called in sick, curled up on his couch with medicine and hot soup. Now he had nowhere to go but another overcrowded shelter where disease spread like wildfire. The free clinic had a 2-hour wait. The younger cop slumped against the wall, shivering despite the humid air. An elderly woman in line took one look at him and handed over her place. "You need it more than me," she said. The kindness made his eyes sting. 2 weeks ago, he'd written her a ticket for panhandling outside a coffee shop. The overworked doctor diagnosed bronchitis, handing him a sample pack of antibiotics. "These are supposed to last 10 days. Try not to lose them." As they left, the veteran cop suddenly grabbed his partner's arm. Across the street, 2 uniformed officers were hassling a homeless man. They watched as the cops dumped out the man's shopping cart, laughing as his belongings scattered across the sidewalk. The younger cop took a step forward instinctively, then stopped. He wasn't a cop right now. Just another homeless nobody. His partner's jaw tightened. "We used to do that shit." "Yeah," the younger cop whispered. "We did." They woke to find their shoes gone. The younger cop stared at the empty space where they'd been, too tired to even curse. An older homeless woman, someone they'd come to know as Mama Lou, tossed them a pair of battered flip-flops. "Street lesson number 1, she said. You sleep with your shoes tied to your wrists." As they walked to the soup kitchen, the veteran cop suddenly froze. "That's my daughter." Across the street, a teenage girl carried shopping bags with friends. The younger cop watched his partner's face twist with pain as the girl passed within 20 feet without glancing their way. "She doesn't recognize you," the younger cop said gently. His partner shook his head. "No. She saw me. She looked right through me." Public libraries were the only place to check news. The video of their humiliation had 12 million views now. The comments section was a graveyard of their reputations. "Hope they starve. Typical pig behavior." Should be in jail. The younger cop clicked away quickly. His hands shook as he pulled up his wife's social media. New photos showed her at a barbecue with friends, and his old partner from the academy, his arm around her shoulders. He logged off before his partner could see. The shelter dining hall erupted into chaos when someone stole a sandwich. The younger cop found himself pinned against a wall by a wild-eyed man screaming about respect. For the first time in weeks, his training kicked in. He used a wristlock to break free, then immediately raised his hands in surrender. "I'm not your enemy, brother. We're all just hungry here." The man backed off, but the damage was done. Word spread, these two had police training. The suspicious glances returned. Their fragile acceptance in this world was crumbling. A sleek car pulled up as they sorted cans at a food bank. The window rolled down to reveal a smirking reporter. "Gentlemen. Channel 7 News. Care to comment on your experience?" The veteran cop turned away. "Come on," the reporter pressed. "Surely you've learned something. Maybe, the system fails people?" The younger cop felt the rage bubble up. This asshole wanted sound bites, not truth. He opened his mouth. Then he saw him. Judge Carter, standing across the street, watching silently. Their eyes met. The judge gave an almost imperceptible nod. The younger cop turned back to the reporter. "You want a quote? Here's one: until you've slept in your own piss because the shelters are full, you don't know shit about the system." The reporter's smirk faded as the car window closed. That night, as they bedded down in an abandoned laundromat, the veteran cop spoke into the dark. 5 more days. Neither mentioned they were starting to forget what home felt like. The final morning dawned gray and quiet. The two men woke where they'd fallen asleep, behind a dumpster in an alley that smelled of rotting food and gasoline. 30 days. It was over. The younger cop sat up slowly, his body protesting every movement. He looked at his partner and almost laughed at the sight, both of them filthy, bearded, their eyes hollow from weeks of exhaustion. They looked exactly like the people they used to ignore. A black sedan pulled up to the alley's entrance. The same suited man from a month ago stepped out, holding 2 garment bags. "Gentlemen," he said, his voice neutral. "Time to come home." They changed in the back of the car, clean shirts, pressed pants, their old duty belts. The familiar weight of their badges felt foreign now. The younger cop turned his over in his hands, remembering how carelessly he'd worn it before. City Hall was packed when they arrived. Reporters, officials, even some of the homeless folks they'd come to know waited in the crowded chamber. Mayor Carter stood at the podium, but her eyes kept drifting to her uncle, who sat quietly in the front row. The officers took their places at the microphone. The room fell silent. The veteran cop cleared his throat. "We." His voice broke. He tried again. "We thought we knew this city. We didn't." The younger cop took over. "We thought we were the good guys. Mostly, we were just bullies with badges." He looked directly at Judge Carter. "Thank you for showing us the truth." The judge nodded slightly, his expression unreadable. Mayor Carter stepped forward. "Your suspensions are lifted effective immediately. You'll be assigned to the new Homeless Outreach Division, working directly with shelter programs and street teams." The room erupted in murmurs. The younger cop's hands shook. This wasn't punishment, it was purpose. As they left the podium, Mama Lou from the shelter caught the younger cop's arm. "Don't screw this up, baby," she whispered. Outside, autumn sunlight washed over the city. The veteran cop took a deep breath. Where to first? His partner smiled for the first time in a month. "Let's start with breakfast at the shelter. I owe someone a sandwich." And with their badges gleaming in the light, the two cops walked down the steps, not as heroes, not as villains, but as changed men ready to do better.